The Code Switch.
Good morning to the world. Someone I think we should not sing when you have a singer in front of you.
I know,
right?
And
I
was just waiting for some harmony.
One of the most, as a singer, let me just tell you, one of the most fun things to do is to sing off key. No, I sing off key with you.
So, are you laughing with me or?
No, with you. You're just not laughing yet.
Okay, fine. I'm just gonna, for now, let me just wait until you leave and then I'll start singing again, the little Mikasa thing. But, so this morning, I want to talk about Lobola. Why did you have to frame it like that, like this medieval cultural practice, right?
Why is that medieval now? Yeah, see, that's more about you than that.
Am I projecting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, maybe we're just always sensitive about how we are presented, and anyway, that's a whole other discussion. I want to talk about Lobola because me, feminist, womanist, Panashe believes in Lobola, and I insist. In fact, my boyfriend and I had a discussion a couple months ago that we need to have, or we need to become serious about our finances so that in 2 years' time, Lobola needs to happen. And if you're not serious, if you're not interested in it, if you think that I'm not the person that you'd be interested in paying Lobola for, just let me know now so we can break it off, right?
No pressure. Yeah,
no pressure. I think it's important. Expectations management, right?
Wait, does that count as you asking him to marry you?
But I don't have a romantic notion about what marriage needs. Well, I don't subscribe to the Western idea of what marriage needs to be in the sense that I must get a ring. I don't want to be surprised.
I think it's about expectations in a relationship. So he needs to know that you think this is going towards marriage, not tomorrow, not next week. But if he's like, actually, I would never marry you, we're just
then
kicking
you must know.
It's a good time to have
It's not a trap, but it's just to know that if you think we've been together for 3 years' time, and if for 3 years now, and if you think that still this is not someone I think I could have,
you should know by now.
Then you should know. And I think it's just important to have those kind of things. And for me, again, and this is why how we frame marriage and coming together is important because I'm not worried that he didn't do the. I would like the whole down on one knee, but that's a formality. We really should have discussed it and really known what we're going to do before. I don't want surprises because this is my life too. So I can't wait for you to decide to pop it up on one day. It needs to be something that we discuss. So with Lobola again, I believe that if we really want to understand the intention behind Lobola, at least what I would like the intention of Lobola to be, it's to bring two families together because marriage is not a one-day process in African culture. It's bringing in the different families. And for me, it's really important because as a Zimbabwean, a Shona coming into South African culture, I would like this as an opportunity for him to meet my family to meet his family. And I also think it just means you're a lot more serious. If we're now talking about our finances and that sort of thing, then I know it's not a flash in the pan sort of thing. And I also am very clear that I would not like my uncles, my family to be overcharging anyone because it comes out of my household. So it should just be a nominal amount just to show gratitude. And I'm also more than willing to participate and say, look, we think it's probably going to be a ballpark figure of 2 cattle, so let me also start saving up for the other one and let's come together because ultimately it cannot just be something that he magically needs to come up with or the kind of money he needs to come up with. I should also contribute because I believe this is about two families coming together, not about me being paid for as a woman. And in that way, I do think that Lobola can be a practice that is progressive, particularly for middle-class women, because I think I do have a lot more rights as a middle-class woman or a lot more privilege than, let's say, a rural woman would have. That's a mouthful.
The ability to exercise your rights.
Exactly, the ability to exercise my rights and sort of stand up and be like, the fact that I can even come and say all of these things is indicative of a lot of privilege that I have. So I wouldn't say it's a blanket policy that yes, everybody should continue, but I do think that it's a beautiful practice if we, ensure that we practice in a way that actually benefits and serves us. You look like you're just like, short blasphemy.
Okay, no, well, I support the tradition and the maintenance and the nurturing of this Lobola situation. I don't think you should be contributing to your own Lobola though.
Why?
It's just me. I think that is I brought the lion back home type situation, you know. And I'm not in any way saying that don't be a contributor in your household. No, you can do the bond, he'll do the groceries and the insurance and whatever. But I think for me, the Lobola is honoring my family, you know, and just saying, Mama, look at this woman, thank you, you know. And also I read the article, you know, that building of the relationship, you know. I'm in complete agreement. It's just when you said, Aish, now you are going to save for your own Lobola. My mom has 4 daughters. She's given us that lecture over and over and over again. You do not pay your own Lobola. It's just taboo. You know? So I'm in support of the culture, and I'm also not about my man being taxed now because hey, I'm beautiful, hey, I'm on stage, hey, she went to Germany, hey, no. It's not about that. It simply is that acknowledgement of this amazing job that you've done, this amazing job as a parent, you know, thank you. And also you're my mom now, you know. It's that building of a relationship. That's for me.
You know, I just struggle with the idea though that the woman in the situation has no agency whatsoever. So she's like a rat in a lab, and they all sorts of things were done to that, and now boom, this is what we have here, you know, to the highest bidder.
No, but you know, right? I think like what Panashe is saying, it's something as a couple that you discuss, you know, and between you and me, my man, you know that I'm very much involved in this. Yes, culture dictates, unfortunately, that I'm not going to be a part of that. I just sit there. At some point, he must come look under blankets. He's looking for me, you know. But
the culture's dynamic, isn't it? So at what point do we say, because it's dynamic, I don't quite understand this whole thing that's going on here, so let's skip that, right? Let's move to the point where it's about families coming together, and that's what we're trying to celebrate here. But then again, you want to hang on to, on some level, the sanctity of our cultures, because, I suppose we like believing that makes us who we are, makes us different from everyone else. Yet at the same time, we're trying to prove that we're not different to everyone else, that we're all the same. So I don't know. It's mind-boggling, but I think I'm more with the idea of two families coming together. You have to do this, but let it be acknowledged that, as a woman, I am an equal participant here. That we're getting married not because, you know, this guy had to work for it, but because I actually this is something that I choose for myself.
I mean, I would agree with that. I think, first of all, when we talk about Lobola or other cultural practices, a lot of times we make assumptions without really knowing the intention behind it. So I think when we say, oh, this is our culture, this is our... First, we must really interrogate and understand what was the meaning, what was the original intention. And is that, as you say, the situation is that, yes, we feel like this is something we want to embrace, then how do we remake it for the 21st century in our contemporary circumstances? And I think it's also important to recognize that different cultures do it differently. So, for instance, in my mother's tradition in Ghana, the Ghana people, the women do the negotiating. And there are specific things that you bring. It's women from one side of the family, women from the other. Neither the bride nor groom are there, so they could really bury you off without you being there. I mean, and of course you're involved, and you know, they go and they report to the men, oh, this is what happened to that. So there are many different ways that different cultures do it. I mean, personally, I would like Mr. Man to pay Lobola for me. Otherwise, well, because my family's going to be like, who's that from where? Like, what is that?
Right. Yeah. As much as we have some of these ideals, you also have to think about what are the ramifications. So, unfortunately, I have now outed myself, but I would have probably done it as something in secret because I view myself as an equal, even sort of in loving my man. I just feel that it's unfair to sort of just expect him to come up with this sum of money that he needs to pay. And I suppose I just want to be part of carrying that burden.
I think it's two things for me. The first is, if we're having a conversation about Lobola, then let us have a conversation about the principle and not the quantum. So whether you're saying it's going to be R2 and I pay R1, he pays another, or it's 200,000, he pays. So I think let's put the actual amount aside, because that's not what it's really supposed to be about. For me, it's, as you say, about the families coming together, the process, learning who we are, but also it's about how we want to live together as we build a family. So I think if you start on the basis of, well, we're not going to do these kind of cultural things and they're archaic, and then that's what your life is going to look like. And if that's your choice, happy for you. But I don't think that's what I would want. Then I think you can come back to the house of Lobola. So again, if you look at other cultures and their practices, it was never that one individual guy is going to go and somehow manage. But in many traditions, it's that the family comes together and says, this is what we're doing. And so it's actually about him creating those family ties, and then those family giving those gifts, that money, whatever, to her family. And should the two of you decide you want to get divorced, then that pot, that piece of cloth, that whatever, that great Auntie Jemima or whoever got, has to come all the way back along these lines. So it's really about creating those linkages. And I think in many ways, we see Lobola as buying a wife, but it's actually saying we recognize that you have invested in this person, and not just financially, she isn't who she is just by herself. And that particularly in traditional cultures in which when a woman leaves her family, there's also a real loss of livelihood and economic contributor. So there's, again, a real reason behind it. Now, personally, I mean, 10 rand Lobola is fine. That way, if we get divorced, I can give you 20 and be like, keep the change, right? so again, for me, it's not the amount, it's the why we're doing what we're doing.
I think the amount has become something that, I mean, for the longest time, after watching Shaka Zulu, I was just on some 55 is the number 55. That I want, because that's what Nandi said she wanted, right? So I just
was way back then.
Right, no, I'm just saying, it was just this thing that I had in my head, right? That I want 55, right? And the way she said it, right? 55 is what I want for myself, right? And I just think that that is also how things become obscured, because now it's about how much money did she get paid? I mean, Nelson Mandela, did he not give elephants for Gracia?
Hey,
right?
I mean, you know, former first lady.
And you know, I'm not mad. I'm like, if you're going to remarry, make sure you marry another head of state. Do that right.
That is not a fluke, but that's another discussion. But exactly. So for me, I just feel that that element also is very damaging, because things like that have been blown out of proportion. And even just if we're talking about the payment, that for me just speaks to so many volumes of this, how a tradition can be obfuscated with so many other things. Because as well, I know that in traditional Shona culture, number one, we didn't start off by paying cattle. We actually had mice long ago, right? And then became cattle. And now increasingly, especially in South Africa, it's cash. So in the same way that people can be so fluid about that, why does it become such a mind?
But don't
we want your money?
And it's a symbol of a larger societal issue. We have an issue around materialism in general.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's partially a reflection of that.
Yeah. Also, how do you, I mean, so these days, if a woman has a degree, it's a lot more depending on, you know, the number, you know, where they position in the family. For example, I'm a second last born, so I'm almost not as significant as the first born or the last born, right? So it would be much less. I'm just thinking then it speaks to what we then value. So essentially you're saying if somebody hasn't been through school, doesn't have a degree, they're suddenly less than. I mean, I think it gets a lot more uncomfortable as well. But I mean, you know, different cultures again do have different standards with that.
But again, it's going back to the original intent that this person is leaving the household where their labor is a contributor. So historically, if you were someone who could do bead or leather working, because that's a real economic quantifiable thing that is now going, that would be, again, that's the rationale behind it. Do we still need to carry it out? As you say, that because, you know, I went to this university versus that Technicon, I now, you know, so, and those are, you're quite right, the things that we need
and you should be able to, I don't know, measure potential. I mean, what happens if 5 years
That's true, potential is important.
Potential is important. You leave the house, you just have a matric. 5 years later, you become a billionaire.
But it's also the flip side, right? It's kind of like playing the stock market. Okay, so maybe you invested, you thought this woman was on the fast track to being the first black woman and president of NetBank, then she's like, actually, never mind.
Actually,
she got her body got ruined.
No, whatever, right?
But actually, there is an app. I mean, I should have brought my phone here, so we could have looked at that Nigerian app and just sort of valuing, right?
Really?
Yes, you can value women. So you put in what your different metrics are. Educated,
and it
beautiful.
like estimates a Lobola price.
Yes.
But can I say something though? I think that there is also a way in which we value men. It's not as overt overt or specific, because we don't pay Lobola for men with the exception of Panashe.
Yeah.
Right?
I said I'm willing. I'm willing.
You can tell we're all looking at you. But I think it's like, okay, dude has a degree, he went to this school, he drives this car, and I'm not saying that's right, but it again goes back to the materialism. So why is it that you'd be more, and when I say you, I mean generally, why is it that a lot of women are more willing to tolerate negative behaviors from a man that makes a lot of money, but God forbid you're a street vendor acting that same way, you know not to come out?
Because you'd rather be crying with that mink than be crying in a shack.
So my point is, it's about materialism in general and the ways in which that's colored our relationships.
It's materialism.
I think it's also being practical, guys. Love is not, yes, it's a thin line. It's not, because love is not, if we grow up and we start saying that love is not just about the feeling, and I think that's why.
We fall in and out of love.
Exactly, and I think just wrapping up again, for me, I think whatever it is that we choose to do with Lobola, and when we get to those stages in our lives, it needs to make sure that it is about serving our purposes, and the fine line between, is this about valuing my parents? Do I ensure that our families have come together? Because at least for me, that's a very important aspect about culture, that you should be able to pick and choose, because ultimately, what's your culture there for? It's about being a template to enable your life, not to hinder and suffocate and just cripple your bank account.
Igama lam nguNozuko, aka Zoo of Zuko Collective. I'm all about music, peace, love, and happy conversations.